The security footage showed a woman stealing bread at 6:14 a.m. 2 loaves, whole wheat. She did not run. She walked out the front door like she had paid. The owner of the store, a man worth $1.7 billion, did not call the police. He got in his car and followed her. She walked for 40 minutes. She turned into a building with no sign, no number, and no government record. Inside were 41 children eating their only meal of the day. She had been feeding them for 9 years. No one knew. What he discovered next made the bread look like a message. What it exposed about his own company made him sit down on a concrete floor and not speak for 6 minutes. Kofi Owusu-Mensah had built Mansa Foods from a single grain warehouse in Tema into the largest food distribution company in West Africa. 614 stores across Ghana, Nigeria, Côte d'Ivoire, and Senegal. 12 processing plants, government supply contracts in 4 countries. His face had appeared on the cover of Forbes Africa twice, once in 2018 and again in 2021. His net worth, as of the last public estimate, was $1.7 billion. He was 61 years old. He woke up at 4:30 every morning without an alarm. He drove himself to his flagship store in East Legon, Accra, every single day in a black Mercedes G-Wagon that cost more than most houses in the neighborhoods he passed on the way. He wore the same style of clothes every day: dark trousers, a white shirt, black leather shoes polished until they reflected light. He believed in 2 things above all else: order and numbers. Everything that could be counted should be counted. Everything that could be measured should be measured. Waste was a disease. Efficiency was the cure. His father, Nana Kwame Owusu-Mensah, had taught him that when Kofi was 9 years old, standing behind the counter of a small provision store in Adum, Kumasi. The store sold rice, soap, matches, tinned milk, and kerosene. Every evening, father and son counted every item on every shelf. If a number was off by 1, they found the reason before they went to bed. "If you cannot count it, it does not exist," his father told him. Kofi had lived by that sentence for 52 years. He had built an empire on it. He had never once questioned whether it was complete. The bread theft was not new. His head of security at the East Legon store, a man named Solomon Quarty, had first flagged it 3 weeks earlier. An elderly woman, same time every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. 2 loaves, always whole wheat. She never took anything else. She never looked nervous. She moved through the store like someone who belonged there, picked up the bread, put it in a woven raffia bag, and walked out the front door. Solomon had recommended banning her from the store and filing a report with the Accra Metropolitan Police. Kofi told him to wait, not because he felt sorry for her, not because the bread was insignificant, because the pattern did not make sense to him. 2 loaves, 3 times a week, for what Solomon estimated had been at least 4 months. That was roughly 100 loaves. 100 loaves of whole wheat bread was not hunger. Hunger was desperate. Hunger was fast. Hunger grabbed and ran. This woman moved with purpose. She took the same thing every time, at the same time, in the same way. That was not theft. That was supply. And Kofi Owusu-Mensah had spent his entire career studying supply chains. He did not report them. He followed them. He wanted to know where 100 loaves of bread had gone. He wanted to know what they were feeding. On a Wednesday morning in the 2nd week of March, Kofi sat in his G-Wagon in the parking lot of the East Legon store at 6:09 a.m. The sun was just starting to heat the concrete. The store had been open for 9 minutes. At 6:14, the woman walked in through the front entrance. She was small, 5 feet tall, maybe less. Thin arms, a faded blue dress with a pattern that had been washed away so many times it looked like the ghost of a pattern. She moved through the store, slowly, touching nothing on the shelves. She passed the canned goods, the cleaning supplies, the rice aisle. She walked to the bread section near the back. She picked up 2 loaves of whole wheat bread. She placed them in the raffia bag she carried on her shoulder. The bag looked older than she was. The weave was tight, handmade. She turned and walked to the front of the store. She passed 2 open registers. She did not slow down. She did not look at the cashiers. She walked out the front door into the morning light and turned left on the sidewalk. Kofi started his engine. He pulled out of the parking lot and followed at a distance of about 50 meters. She did not look back. Not once. She walked south on the Spintex road for almost 20 minutes. Then she turned left into a narrow lane behind the Coca-Cola bottling plant, past a mechanic's shop with 3 cars on blocks and a woman frying yams in a blackened pan over a charcoal fire. She crossed a drainage ditch on a plank of wood that bent under her weight. Kofi left his car at the mouth of the lane and followed on foot. He had never walked through this part of the city. The buildings were low, tin roofs held down with rocks, open gutters, walls made of cinder block and corrugated metal. A church built from 2 shipping containers, children playing with a tire rim. The air smelled like coal smoke and frying oil. Kofi's shoes were worth more than some of the structures he passed. He kept walking. After 40 minutes total, the woman turned into a 2-story concrete building on an unpaved street with no name. The building had no sign, no painted number, no gate. The walls were cracked in places. The windows had no glass, only wooden shutters that were open to let in air. A rusted water tank sat on the flat roof, tilted slightly like it might fall. There was a concrete step at the entrance, worn smooth by years of feet. Kofi stood outside and listened. He heard children, not the sound of children playing, the sound of children eating, spoons against bowls. 41 of them, though he did not know the number yet. He was about to. He stepped inside. The ground floor was one large room. Concrete walls, no paint, no plaster. A black board made from a sheet of plywood painted black stood against the far wall. On it, a mathematics lesson was written in chalk, long division, with 3 example problems worked out neatly. 41 children sat on the floor in rows. They were eating. Each child had a bowl made from a cut-open plastic container. Inside the bowls was a paste of bread torn into small pieces, soaked in water, and mixed with powdered milk. Some of the children were as young as 3. The oldest looked about 14. They were clean. Their clothes were old, faded t-shirts, second-hand shorts, dresses with patches. But every piece had been mended. Their hair was combed. They sat in neat rows with a kind of discipline that came from someone who had taught them that even when you have nothing, you do not sit in chaos. They looked up at Kofi with the same expression, careful, watchful, the kind of eyes that had learned not to expect anything good from a stranger walking through the door. Near the back wall, the woman stood with her hands in the bread. She was tearing it into pieces and dropping them into a large basin. She saw Kofi. She stopped. She held a piece of bread in each hand. She did not run. She did not speak. She just waited. She waited for whatever was about to happen to her, the way someone waits who has been waiting for a long time and has already decided they will not apologize for what they have done. "I own the store," Kofi said. She nodded. She did not put the bread down. "I know," she said. Her voice was calm, not defiant, not scared, just calm, like a woman who had already accepted every possible outcome of this moment. "How long?" he asked. She looked at him for a long time before she answered. 9 years, she said. "I started with the store on Boundary Road. That one closed in 2019. I moved to yours." Kofi looked around the room. He counted the children. He counted them again. 41. He looked at the blackboard. The handwriting was perfect, each number precise, each line straight. "You were a teacher," he said. She straightened her back, just slightly, just enough. "I am a teacher," she said. That sentence landed on Kofi like something physical. Not loud, not dramatic, just heavy. He sat down on a plastic chair near the door. It creaked under his weight. He did not speak, not for 1 minute, not for 3, not for 5. 6 minutes. He later told his driver it was 5. It was 6. The children watched him the entire time. Some of them had stopped eating. The youngest ones looked at the older ones to figure out whether they should be afraid. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The bread in Abena's hands was getting warm. Her name was Abena Serwa Boateng. She was 73 years old. She had been born in a village called Aboaso in the Ashanti region and had walked 4 miles each way to school every day until she was 16. She earned a teaching certificate from the University of Cape Coast in 1974, and for the next 26 years, she taught English and mathematics at Akamota School in Accra, one of the most respected secondary schools in West Africa. She was known for 2 things, her handwriting and her memory. She could recall any lesson she had ever taught. Students from 1978 remembered her the same way students from 2002 did, as the teacher who never raised her voice and never repeated an instruction. In 2014, the Ministry of Education terminated her pension. The reason given was a records discrepancy. Her employment file, they said, was incomplete. 26 years of service, and the government said it could not verify 12 of them. She fought the decision for 2 years, filing appeals, gathering letters from former colleagues, producing her own records. She lost. By 2016, she had no income, no savings, and no family willing to take her in. Her husband had died in 2003. Her only son had moved to London in 2010 and stopped returning her calls in 2013. What she did have was a building. Her mother, Efua Achia Boateng, had purchased it in 1971 for 400 cedis. Efua had dreamed of opening a school, not a government school, a school for children who had no one. She had grown up during the final years of colonial rule and had watched too many children fall through the cracks of a system that was built to sort, not to save. She bought the 2-story building in Teshie Nungwa with money she had saved over 11 years of selling cloth at Makola Market. She planned to open it in 1975. She never did. Her health failed in 1980. She spent 9 years in and out of hospitals. She died of tuberculosis in 1989. The building sat empty for 25 years. Rain came through the roof. Termites ate the window frames. Weeds grew through the cracks in the floor. Neighbors used the downstairs as storage for broken furniture. Nobody cared about it. Nobody remembered what it was supposed to be. When Abena lost everything in 2016, she went to the only place she had left. She moved into the upstairs room with a mattress, a kerosene lamp, and a photograph of her mother standing in front of this same building in 1971. Ifua was wearing a white head wrap in the photograph. She was smiling. Behind her, the building was new. The concrete was clean. The shutters were painted green. Abena hung the photograph on the wall. Within 3 months, the first child arrived. Dor. The child's name was Gifty Owusu. She was 4 years old. Her mother had left her sitting on the concrete step outside the building, with a plastic bag containing one dress, one pair of underwear, and a note written on the back of a receipt from a pharmacy. The note said, "I will come back." She never came back. Abena heard the child crying at 7 p.m. She brought her inside. She cooked rice on a coal pot and fed her with a spoon. She bathed her with water from a bucket and put her to sleep on the mattress next to her. That was August 2016. By December, there were 5 children. By March 2017, there were 11. Word had spread through the neighborhood the way word spreads in places where there are no social services and no safety nets. Quietly, mouth to mouth, from one desperate parent to another. A woman in Teishi Nungwa who takes children. She does not ask questions. She does not charge money. She feeds them. She teaches them. By 2019, there were 27. By 2022, 34. By the time Kofi Owusu Mensah followed a woman with 2 loaves of bread in March 2025, there were 41. No NGO registration, no government funding, no church donations, no charity drives, no volunteers, just Abena Serwa Boateng and whatever she could find, borrow, grow in the small patch of dirt behind the building, or, 3 times a week, steal from a store owned by the richest man in Ghana. What Kofi had walked into was not a crisis, it was a system, a working, functioning system built by a 73-year-old woman with no funding and no staff. He did not understand that yet. He would not understand it until he came back the next day, and the day after that. What he was about to discover in that building would make the bread irrelevant. It would make his security cameras and his inventory software look like toys compared to what one woman had built with cardboard and chalk. He had spent his life counting things that made him rich. He was about to meet someone who had spent 9 years counting things that kept children alive. Kofi came back the next morning at 7 a.m. He did not tell his assistant. He did not tell his driver. He parked 2 blocks away and walked. The children were already in rows. Abena was at the blackboard. The chalk in her hand was barely 2 inches long. She taught English to the younger children first, the ones between 3 and 6. She used a method Kofi had never seen before. She drew pictures of objects on the board, said the word, had the children repeat it, then broke the word into syllables and had them clap along. After 30 minutes, she switched to mathematics for the older children, the ones between 10 and 14. Multiplication and division. She did not use a textbook. She did not need one. She wrote problems from memory, solved the first one as a demonstration, and then called students to the board one at a time to solve the rest. When they got it wrong, she did not correct them. She asked them a question that led them to find the mistake themselves. Then she taught history. All 41 children together. She told them about the Ashanti Empire and the Ya Asantewa War of 1900 with so much detail that the smallest children sat completely still with their mouths open. Kofi sat on the same plastic chair and watched for 4 hours. He did not interrupt. He did not check his phone. He just watched. He watched a woman teach 41 children across 5 age groups in the same room with no books, no notebooks, no pencils, no desks, and no electricity. And every child was paying attention. On the second day, he looked more carefully. He stopped watching the teaching and started looking at the walls. There were charts, hand-drawn attendance charts going back to 2017. Every child's name. Every day marked with a small tick for present or a circle for absent. There were health charts, each child's weight recorded every month, on charts drawn in pen on sheets of paper taped to the wall. She weighed them on a bathroom scale she had found at a dump site in Tema and carried home on her head. There were reading progress charts, levels 1 through 5. Each child's name with a colored mark, red for level 1, yellow for level 2, green for level 3, blue for level 4, black for level 5, showing exactly where they were in their reading ability. Kofi pulled one chart off the wall and held it. 23 of the 41 children had moved from level 1 to level 3 or higher in the past 18 months. Without textbooks, without notebooks, without a single CDI of government support. He walked upstairs. The second floor had 4 rooms. One was Abina's bedroom, a mattress on the floor, a kerosene lamp, and the photograph of Afua. The second room was storage. Kofi opened the door and stood still. 41 folders, each one made from cut-up cardboard boxes, cereal boxes, rice boxes, detergent boxes, held together with tape and labeled with a child's name in Abina's handwriting. He opened the first folder. Inside, a handwritten birth certificate, because many of these children had never been registered. A medical history in blue pen, growth records, behavioral notes, learning milestones. A hand-drawn family tree showing whatever Abena had learned about where the child came from. He opened another folder. Same thing, another, same thing. All 41, every folder complete. He opened the third room, the kitchen. A single coal pot blackened from 9 years of daily use. A bag of rice that was almost empty, maybe 2 cups left. Powdered milk in a tin with a rusted lid. A small bag of salt. 1 tin of tomato paste, dented. A plastic bucket for water. A metal spoon and a ladle. That was the entire supply chain feeding 41 children. And the meals were not 3 a day. They were 1. 1 meal. Bread soaked in water and powdered milk in the morning. On days when Abena managed to get rice from somewhere, a market vendor who gave her the broken grains at the bottom of the sack, a neighbor who had extra, there was a second meal in the evening. Most days, there was not. He opened the fourth room, the sick room. A mattress on the floor, a thermometer that still worked, a bottle of paracetamol that had expired 2 years ago, a packet of oral rehydration salts, and a notebook labeled illness log. Kofi opened it. Every illness, every fever, every cough, every rash, every stomach pain, written in pen with the date, the child's name, the symptoms, what Abena did about it, and how the child responded. Entry after entry after entry. 9 years of entries. He turned to a page from 2020. A boy named Kwadwo Asante, age 8 at the time, had developed a fever of 39.4 degrees that lasted 3 days. Abena had bathed him in cool water every 4 hours, given him the expired paracetamol in half doses, and stayed awake beside him for 2 nights. On the 3rd day, the fever broke. She had written at the bottom of the entry, Kwadwo is strong. He did not cry once. Kofi sat down on the floor of that storage room. He held one of the cardboard folders in his hands. It was the folder for Kwadwo Asante, now 11 years old. Inside was a note Abina had written in 2020. It said, "Kwadwo has not spoken since he arrived. He draws instead. He draws buildings, very detailed buildings with windows and staircases and doors that open. I believe he will be an architect one day. I am saving his drawings." Clipped to the back of the folder were 14 drawings, all buildings, all detailed, all drawn with pencils that had been sharpened down to 2-inch stubs because there was no money for new pencils. Kofi closed the folder. He put it back in the stack. 41 folders, 41 children, 9 years, no salary, no funding, no recognition from any government, any organization, any church, any person. 1 meal a day, 2 stolen loaves of bread, 3 times a week, and every single child was accounted for, named, tracked, weighed, taught, known. Each one had a folder with their name on it. Each one was a person to Abena Serwa Boateng, not a number. Kofi thought about his own company, his 12 processing plants, his 614 stores, his inventory management software that cost $4.2 million to develop, his compliance department, his HR team of 47 employees whose only job was to track performance metrics. And he looked at a 73-year-old woman who had done more with stolen bread and cardboard folders than his entire infrastructure had ever done for a single child in the community where he made his money. She could name every child. She knew every birthday, every allergy, every fear, every talent. She had counted what mattered. He had counted what sold. Kofi drove back to his office that afternoon. He sat at his desk for 45 minutes without opening his laptop. His assistant, Priscilla Ajay, brought him his schedule for the week. He looked at it. A board meeting on Friday, a government liaison dinner on Saturday at the Kempinski Hotel, a photo opportunity at a school in Tama on Monday, a school his company had donated desks to. He stared at that line. Desks. His company had donated desks. Wooden desks with the Mansa Foods logo engraved on the side. A photographer had taken pictures. The pictures had been used in the annual CSR report. The report had been sent to shareholders. The shareholders had been satisfied. And 5 kilometers from his flagship store, 41 children were eating bread soaked in water on a concrete floor. Kofi picked up his phone and called his chief financial officer, Edmund Teta. "Edmund, how much do we spend on corporate social responsibility per year?" Edmund checked. $2.6 million, sir. The bulk goes to school desk donations, branded scholarship ceremonies, and the annual food drive at Christmas. "How many children have we directly housed, fed, or educated with that money in the past 5 years?" Kofi asked. "Directly," Edmund repeated. "Directly," Kofi said. "I will need to pull the reports, sir." "Pull them," Kofi said. "Get me the answer before Friday." He hung up. He sat at his desk and looked at the Forbes Africa covers framed on his wall. 2 of them, his face on both. He had looked proud in those photographs. He was not sure what he looked like now. The answer came on Thursday morning. Edmund brought it personally. He did not email it. He walked into Kofi's office and placed a single sheet of paper on the desk. The number was 0. $13 million in corporate social responsibility, spending over 5 years. And the number of children Mansa Foods had directly housed, fed, or educated was 0. The desk donations had been photographed and never followed up on. 3 of the schools had closed since receiving the desks. The scholarship ceremonies had awarded checks on stage in front of cameras, but 11 of the 23 recipients had never cashed them because they could not open bank accounts without national ID cards they could not afford. The Christmas food drive distributed branded Mansa Foods packages to families pre-selected by a PR agency for maximum media coverage. Not the families who needed food the most, but the families who photographed the best. Kofi read the report 3 times. Then he called a meeting with his entire CSR department. 7 people sat in the conference room on the 8th floor of the Mansa Foods headquarters in East Legon. Kofi asked them one question. Can any of you name a single child whose life is measurably different because of something we did? Silence. 7 faces, not one name. He dismissed them. He did not fire them. Not yet. But the thing his father had taught him, if you cannot count it, it does not exist, was sitting in his chest like a stone he could not swallow. Because Abena Serwa Boateng could count every single one of her children. She could name them. She could tell you their birthdays, their fears, their talents, and she had never owned a computer in her life. Kofi went back to the building on Friday morning. He brought a cashier's check for $500,000. He walked in and handed it to Abena. She looked at it. She looked at him. She put it on the table and said, "I do not want your money." Kofi blinked. "It is $500,000. "I know what it is," she said. She did not raise her voice. She did not sound angry. She sounded like a teacher who was about to explain something important to a student who thought he already knew the answer. "I want you to understand what I built before you try to buy it. This is not a project. This is not a charity. This is a school. My mother bought this building to be a school. She did not finish it. I did. And I did not finish it so that a rich man could come and put his name on it." Kofi opened his mouth to speak. She held up her hand. "Sit down," she said. He sat. She walked him through the building again. But this time, she did not show him charts or folders or the kitchen or the sick room. This time, she showed him the children. Not as a group, not as a number. One by one. And what she showed him was not a woman struggling to survive. It was a woman who had built something that worked, something that had worked every single day for 9 years, something that ran on nothing but knowledge, discipline, and bread she took from his shelf. Gifty Owusu, the first child, now 13 years old, was teaching the younger ones to read. She used a method Abena had taught her. The same method Efua Achia Boateng had designed in the 1970s when she planned to open this building as a school. Phonics first, then syllables, then whole words, then sentences, then stories. Gifty could read at level 5, the highest on Abena's chart. She was teaching level 2. She stood at the blackboard with the same calm authority Abena had. Her handwriting was almost identical. A boy named Yaw Frimpong, age 12, managed the building's water supply. He walked to the public tap 6 blocks away every morning at 5 a.m. with 2 20-liter jerry cans strapped to a wooden cart he had built himself from scrap wood and bicycle wheels. He made the trip 3 times, 60 liters. Enough for 41 children to drink, wash their hands, and cook 1 meal. He had been doing this every day since he was 9 years old, and he had not missed a single morning. A girl named Akosua Mensah, age 14, kept the health log. She took temperatures every morning with the one working thermometer. She recorded symptoms. She knew which children were allergic to ground nuts, Which ones had asthma? Which ones needed iron supplements? She had never seen the inside of a hospital herself, but she could identify a fever, an ear infection, and dehydration faster than most adults Kofi had ever met. These children were not being stored. They were not being warehoused. They were not waiting for rescue. They were being raised. They were running a system, and the system had been designed by a woman who had learned it from her mother, who had dreamed of a school in this exact building 54 years ago. Kofi's board meeting on Friday did not go the way he planned. He presented a proposal: redirect $2 million of the annual CSR budget away from branded desk donations and PR-selected food drives, and toward building a proper facility at Abina's location. Classrooms, a kitchen, a medical clinic, legal registration for all 41 children. His board of directors, 9 men and 2 women, listened. Then his vice chairman spoke, Nana Agyeman Prempeh. He was 58 years old. He had been Kofi's business partner for 22 years. They had built Mansa Foods together. Nana was the numbers man, the legal mind, the one who reviewed every contract, every acquisition, every deal. He was respected, he was careful, and he said, "No. Kofi, we are a food distribution company. We are not a children's charity. Our shareholders expect returns, not orphanages. If you want to help this woman, do it privately. Do not drag the company into a project that has no measurable ROI." 3 other board members nodded. Nana's father, a retired high court judge named Justice Kwabena Prempeh, had once told his son something that Nana repeated at least twice a year at board meetings. Charity is a photograph. Business is a structure. Never confuse the two. Nana had never confused them. He looked at the numbers. The numbers said no, but the numbers had also said yes to $13 million in CSR spending that had helped exactly 0 children. Nana did not mention that part. He had calculated correctly about everything he could see. He had not calculated what he could not see. And what he could not see was already in the documents. Kofi did not argue at the board meeting. He did not raise his voice. He did not pound the table or make a speech about moral obligation. He sat through the rest of the agenda. He signed the quarterly report. He shook hands with every board member. And that night, he did something he had not done in 30 years. He drove to Kumasi. 3 hours on the highway in the dark. He parked outside the building where his father's provision store had been. It was a phone repair shop now. The shelves that had once held rice and tinned milk were gone. Kofi sat in his car for an hour. He thought about the sentence his father had given him 52 years ago. If you cannot count it, it does not exist. And for the first time in his life, he understood what his father had actually meant. Nana Kwame Owusu Mensah had been a shopkeeper. He counted soap and rice and kerosene on his shelves. But he also counted something else. He counted the children in the neighborhood who came into his shop hungry. He counted the women who could not afford milk for their babies. He counted the old men who sat outside his store because they had nowhere else to go. He gave them what he could, not because it was good for business, because they were people who could be counted. Kofi's father had not meant that only numbers matter. He had meant count what matters, count the people, count the need. And Kofi had spent 52 years counting the wrong things. It took a 73-year-old woman who stole bread to show him what his own father had been trying to teach him all along. He came back to Accra on Monday morning. He did not go to the office. He drove straight to Teshie Nungwa. He sat on the plastic chair. He looked at Abena and said, "Tell me what you need, not money. Tell me what you need." Abena looked at him the way she looked at students who had finally arrived at the right answer after a long time of getting it wrong. She said, "I need someone to register these children. 23 of them do not officially exist. No birth certificates. No national health insurance. The government does not know they are alive. I need a kitchen that does not run on coal. I need a water connection so that a 12-year-old boy does not have to wake up at 5 in the morning every day for the rest of his childhood. I need medicine that is not expired. I need someone to fix the roof before the rains come in June. And I need you to understand one thing." She paused. "This building belongs to my mother. It was her dream. I am keeping it alive. But I am 73 years old. I will not be here forever. I need to know that when I am gone, someone will keep counting these children." Kofi wrote everything down on the back of a brown envelope, 6 items. He folded the envelope. He put it in his shirt pocket. He stood up, walked to his car, and drove away without saying a word. Stay with me. What happens next is not what anyone expected. 3 months later, the building in Teshie Nungwa had a new roof, concrete, reinforced, rated for 10 years of heavy rain. It had running water from a borehole drilled 20 meters deep in the courtyard. It had a kitchen with a gas stove, a full-size refrigerator that had been removed from a Mansa Foods warehouse, and enough food in storage for 3 meals a day, 7 days a week. It had a sick room with real medicine, a working thermometer, a blood pressure cuff, and a visiting nurse named Grace Teta, who came every Tuesday and Thursday. 23 children who had never been registered with the government now had birth certificates filed with the Births and Deaths Registry of Ghana. Each one had a national health insurance card. Each one existed. Kofi had paid for all of it, not from the company budget, not from Mansa Foods, from his personal account. $2.3 million. His board had said no. Nana Agyeman Prempeh had said no. Kofi had said yes with his own money. He did not ask for permission. He did not issue a press release. He did not hold a ribbon-cutting ceremony. He did not put the Mansa Foods logo anywhere on the building. There was no logo. There was a name. Painted in blue, letters above the entrance, in the same spot where the building had been blank for 54 years. The name read, Efua Achia Learning House, Abena's mother's name. The school she never got to open. The dream she carried from 1971 until the day she died. Finally finished. Not by money, by her daughter, and by 2 loaves of stolen bread. Nana Agyeman Prempeh resigned from the Mansa Foods Board of Directors 6 weeks after the building reopened. Not because of the building, because of what the building uncovered. When Kofi's legal team began the process of registering the 23 undocumented children, they had to pull records. Birth records, displacement records, social welfare files. And in those records, they found something that no one had expected. 14 of the 41 children in Abena's care had been displaced from communities where Mansa Foods had built processing plants. Communities in the Volta region and the western region where land had been purchased for industrial development. Families had been relocated and financial compensation had been promised in writing. The compensation had never been delivered. Not partially, not late, never. The families had been moved. Their farmland had been bulldozed. Processing plants had been built on top of where they used to live, and the paperwork promising them payment had been filed, stamped, and forgotten. 14 children, 14 families that had been erased. The same company that had spent $13 million on branded PR and could not name one child it had helped had directly created 14 of the children who needed help. The documents were clear, the dates matched, the community names matched, and Nana Agyaman Prempe had personally overseen 3 of those land acquisitions. His signature was on the compensation agreements. He had never followed up. He had never checked whether the families received what they were promised. He resigned on a Tuesday morning. He released a 1-paragraph statement that said he was pursuing personal business interests. The Accra Daily Mail reported it as a routine board departure. It was not routine. It was the quietest collapse Kofi had ever seen, and he had not filed a single complaint. He had not made a single phone call. The documents did the work. They always do. 1 year after the Efua Achia Learning House opened, it had 63 children. A second floor had been added. 2 full-time teachers had been hired, both former students of Abina's from Akimota School, who had heard what she was doing and came to help without being asked. One of them, a woman named Doris Antwi, had been in Abina's English class in 1996. She said she still remembered the lesson on Chinua Achebe that changed how she thought about stories. Gifty Owusu, now 14, was preparing for the Basic Education Certificate examination. She was expected to score in the top 5% nationally. Yaw Frimpong no longer woke up at 5 in the morning to haul water. The borehole had given him his mornings back. He spent them drawing mechanical diagrams of the cart he had built, taking it apart, and rebuilding it better. He had been accepted into a junior engineering program at Ashisi University on a full scholarship, arranged not by Kofi, but by an engineering professor named Dr. Samuel Osei, who had visited the learning house and seen the cart sitting in the courtyard. Kwadwo Asante was 12 years old. He still did not talk much, but his building drawings were getting bigger, more detailed, more ambitious. A professor of architecture at Knust had seen one of his drawings pinned to the wall during a visit. The drawing had been signed in pencil at the bottom. Kwadwo Asante, architect, Efua Achia Learning House. The professor had taken a photograph of it. She had not said anything to Kwadwo. She had simply started a file with his name on it. He did not know that yet, but it was going to matter. Abena Serwa Boateng turned 74 in August. Kofi came to the celebration. There was no cake. There was jollof rice, fried plantain, and groundnut soup, cooked by the older children in the kitchen that now had running water and a working stove. The smell filled the entire building and drifted out into the street. Neighbors who had walked past this building for 30 years without looking at it came to the door and looked inside for the first time. Kofi sat on the same plastic chair he had sat on the first day. It still creaked. He watched Abena move through the room. She touched each child's head as she passed them. She straightened a collar. She wiped a face with the corner of her dress. She whispered something to a boy who laughed so hard he covered his mouth with both hands. She stopped at the photograph on the wall. Her mother, Efua, standing in front of this building in 1971. Abena straightened the frame. She did not say anything. A girl named Ama Darko, age 6, pulled on Abena's dress and handed her a drawing. It was a picture of the building. Blue roof, yellow sun, green grass that did not exist in real life but existed in Ama's imagination. At the bottom of the drawing, in orange crayon, in letters that leaned to the right because Amma was left-handed, it said, Mama's House. Abina folded the drawing carefully and walked upstairs. She placed it inside the cardboard folder labeled Amma Darko. Folder number 47 now. 6 more than when Kofi first walked in, each one complete. Each one a life that someone decided was worth counting. Kofi never put a logo on the building. He never held a press conference. He never mentioned the Efua Achia Learning House in a shareholder report or a speech. But he made one change to his office. On the wall behind his desk, where the 2 Forbes Africa covers had hung for years, he took them down. In their place, he put a single framed piece of paper. It was the attendance chart from 2017, the first one Abina had ever made. 41 names written in blue ink on cardboard, every day marked with a small tick, hand-drawn lines, no software, no spreadsheet. Just a woman who woke up every morning and decided that these children existed, that they mattered, and that someone should write their names down. Kofi looked at that chart every morning before he opened his laptop, before he checked the stock price, before he read the revenue reports. 41 names. The only numbers that had ever truly mattered. If a woman stole from you every week for 9 years to feed children you never knew existed, and then refused your money until you understood what she had built, would you sit down and listen? Or would you call the police? Leave your answer below.